Hello and welcome to News Central Now. I'm Dashen, Usman. The top stories this hour. Fire outbreak recorded at Dangote refinery in Lagos. Company says no cause for alarm. Former Kaduna Governor El Rufai sues State Assembly for defamation over alleged misappropriation of 423 billion naira. Kenya's President Ruto withdraws finance bill after deadly demonstrations. Details of these stories coming up shortly. Let's begin by telling you that a fire incident has today engulfed parts of the Dangote refinery in Lagos. According to reports, the fire broke out in the early hours of Wednesday at the effluent treatment plant of the refinery. There's been no confirmation yet as to how the fire started, but videos showed smoke billowing out of the section of the refinery affected by the fire. Now, the fire has since been put out, and a statement from the company's spokesperson, Anthony Chiejena, downplayed the severity of the fire incident. In the statement, he said there is no cause for alarm as the refinery is operating and there is no recorded injury or body harm to any staff on duty. It is curious that the incident is coming just 3 days after the company. All right, so now, right now we have to discuss this. I'm being joined by investigative journalist David Hundeyin. Hello, David. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so now the fire incident, is coming less than a year after its opening. And as history would have it, so many Nigerians are worried at the fact that, the refineries, that's the Nigerian refineries, actually tend to go up in flames, as history would have it. What is your take on this?
So, first of all, I have to point out that, at least according to the company, the refinery itself hasn't been affected. So the company claims in the statement that it's the effluent treatment plant that was affected, which is a roundabout way of saying it's the sewage treatment facility, it's the wastewater treatment facility that has been affected by the fire. No further details have been given, so it's kind of difficult to establish exactly how a wastewater treatment facility can go up in flames to that extent, especially when eyewitnesses made mention of there being sounds of explosions. So, but we have to assume that the company is telling the truth. Now, if the company is not telling the truth and there is something else at play here, i.e. sabotage, then definitely that is something to be worried about, because for the avoidance of doubts, it definitely is in some people's interests for the refinery to not work if indeed it had the capacity to work, because historically it's been the case that as far as the economic model of Nigeria and Africa is concerned, some people prefer very much for Nigeria and for Africa to export raw materials with as little beneficiation as possible, if possible, no beneficiation locally whatsoever. So the business model of Nigeria historically has been to export raw materials, so export crude oil, export gas, export solid minerals, export agricultural products, and that's it, with as little local beneficiation as possible, at least as far as the global market is concerned. So with that context in mind, it definitely does raise some questions that is there some sort of foul play involved here, especially as Dangote himself has come out recently to make accusations that the international oil companies active in Nigeria are actively seeking to sabotage the refinery by ensuring that it's not able to source its feedstock locally, and it has to import crude oil from as far afield as the US, and support from the government was being sought to compel.
Yes. Talking about that, David, now they did say that the US has actually refused to insure the company, and also that there are rumors that it might be as a result of, the Indian technology being used. That might be the reason why it is struggling.
So, I mean, there have been rumors that there was an issue with the plant's insurance policy, that apparently Lloyd's of London was approached and they declined to insure it. Again, these are just sort of back channel things that one hears, and these are sort of unverified pieces of information. So that has to be emphasized, that none of this is like documented facts, at least not in the public domain. But there are whispers about things like this, that the fact that the plant was built almost entirely using Indian technology, using Indian expertise and Indian labor, has had some sort of an impact on the difficulty in sourcing adequate insurance to keep the plant running. And if that were the case, that the plant is not insured, or the insurance policy were not to cover this sort of damage due to, whatever reason, then we potentially could be looking at a situation where, without making accusations, just putting the different pieces of the picture together, you have a situation where something that is supposed to be a transformational piece of economic infrastructure in Nigeria, because on its own, this refinery is supposed to be able to satisfy Nigeria's entire local energy demand. And you then have something that basically has the capacity to cripple this thing, or at least postpone its takeoff date, because to date, even though apparently it's producing jet fuel and diesel for the export market, the main thing, which I guess we've all looked forward to for more than a decade since this refinery project was first announced, is the production of PMS, petrol, for the Nigerian market. That still hasn't happened. Bear in mind, this site was commissioned, I think, on May 26th, a few days before President Buhari left office. This is well over a year now, and we're still yet to see any sign of any petrol. I have obviously been a public critic of this in the past, because I have publicly stated on more than one occasion that this plant was commissioned when it was not ready, and is nowhere close to being ready. But, putting that aside, it's also the case that it definitely is in my interest as a Nigerian, it's in our interest as Nigerians for the plant to work, because the more Nigeria is able to export things that have had some beneficiation involved and doesn't need to import finished products as much, the better Nigeria will become economically. So questions do need to be asked, and the company obviously is being very secretive about this. The statement that was released really doesn't seem...
I was actually going to, go back to that, the statement that the company actually released, and the spokesperson, you're trying to downplay the whole thing. In your opinion, as, an investigative journalist, do you think it is a non-issue? Should we be worried?
No, I absolutely do not think it's a non-issue. I think, first of all, that there are discrepancies in the story that has been told by eyewitnesses and the story that is told in the statement released by the company, because the company says it's a minor fire in the wastewater treatment facility. Basically, it's a paper box fire in the toilet, essentially. But the eyewitnesses said that they heard explosions on the site, and clearly the evidence of the eyes tells you that this is not a minor fire at all. There's nothing minor about that fire. So what exactly? And this is a refinery site. So, if you're telling me that a fire is happening at a refinery site, but it had nothing to do with the flammable substances that are on site at the refinery, and it's the wastewater plant that went up, and you're offering no further detail, you're being very evasive, very tersely worded statements, and then the week before this happened, literally the week before this happened, your managing director, I think his name is Devakumar Edwin, has been on a media tour, has been doing the press circuit, directly accusing international oil companies of trying to sabotage this refinery. Well, it may be a case of putting 2 and 2 together and getting 22, right? It might be that the company is telling the truth, but the onus is actually on the company at this point to come out and offer more information, because the fact is that the Nigerian people, via the NNPC and the government, have invested a lot into this project. So the company cannot then act as if, well, this is a private business, you're not entitled to any information about this. Meanwhile, so much public money and public expectation has gone into the building of this thing. If you're happy to take public money and make this project almost a political thing when it was being developed, then you have to be willing to accept scrutiny now. So we need more information.
Okay, David, just before we let you go, now speaking on the amount of money that has actually gone into this particular project, it still raises a question, the fact that, it occurred just 3 days after the project, has gulped in this much amount of money. Now, looking at the future of this refinery, what do you see?
Well, I'll start with what I hope to see. What I hope to see is that it somehow, against all the odds, starts operating and starts to satisfy the local petrol demand of Nigeria, because that is one of the main sources of sort of the forex leakage that Nigeria has to deal with. Nigeria is very much an import-oriented economy, not because Nigeria does not have the capacity to produce and export, but because, again, as I said, historically, it's been the case that those in charge of the global markets have the belief that the place of Africa is to export raw materials with no beneficiation whatsoever. So what I hope to see is that this refinery and the associated petrochemical projects affiliated to it make it such that Nigeria is able to actually exploit its own vast, cheap energy reserves and actually start to industrialize. That's what I hope to see. But what is more likely to happen in the short term, I think the company is going to keep obfuscating, and I think they're going to keep on releasing statements every 3 days, every 5 minutes, telling people we're going to start doing this next week, next month, and it just keeps getting bumped up next month and a month after that and a month after that. Because if you recall, in May 2023, we were told categorically that before the end of June 2023, there will be locally refined petrol in Nigeria's markets. We're nearing the end of June 2024. That absolutely has not happened. No explanation has been volunteered. Just more arbitrarily set deadlines, and then this, which I suspect could possibly be used as an excuse to postpone that self-imposed deadline again. So I think that's what's likely to happen. I hope the company decides to do something different and just come clean for once, because I think we all want to see this work.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David, for speaking to us on this.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's give you some updates on the situation in Rivers State, where the factional National Youth Council of Nigeria, NYCN, has taken to the streets of Port Harcourt in a solidarity march, urging the police to maintain their presence at local government secretariats across Rivers State. Led by factional chairman Sabari Bani, the NYCN marched to the police command headquarters on Moscow Road. Bani addressed the crowd, stating that the police barricades at the secretariats have successfully prevented vandalism by hoodlums. He emphasized the need for the police to stay in place until the appeal court resolves the ongoing political issues in the state. Bani called on the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, to provide the necessary support to ensure peace and security at the council secretariats.
But we are here to state firmly to the Nigerian police force, to this command, led by our able Commissioner of Police, Tunji Disu, for what you have done for Rivers youth. Let me say this to the world, because many people will not know what is happening in Rivers State. What you have combated is more than terrorism in some states.
My duty as a policeman is to protect lives and properties. And I give you my words that we are going to continue to protect lives and properties. We are not politicians. We will do our best not to join their politics.
To discuss this, I'm joined by human rights lawyer Henry Ekine. Hello, Henry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. All right, so tell us, how does the recent Solidarity March in Port Harcourt, reflect the political climate in Rivers State?
Well, citizens have the right to express themselves, and they could do so individually and then could also do so in groups. So that's, for me, an expression of the provisions of the Constitution in terms of the rights of citizens to express themselves. But the reflection with these multi-protests and marches across the streets in Port Harcourt, for me, only reflects the perception of the people and how they understand the issues that seem to arise in Rivers State. There have been divergent constructions, kind of interpretation of positions in matters in court, and then also construction in terms of interpretation of the outcomes of some of the matters in court, and then also the decisions of the government, the governor, and those who had been in power at the local government levels. So all of these have actually led to these marches and protests and, if you like, expression of their views. Different groups. I can see this is by the Nigerian Youth Council of Nigeria, or National Youth Council of Nigeria. I've also watched, I think the last one day, another by some former local government chairmen in the respective local government areas. And then again, a planned march by the organized labor, which of course didn't take place in respect to the directive of the police. So all of these, I think, they are reflections of their perception, their understanding, and their interpretation of some of the outcomes of the decisions of court and even matters that are still in court.
Okay, Henry. Now, how do you view the role of the Inspector General of Police in this crisis? And, if you could tell us also the implications of continuing police occupation of council secretariat complexes.
I had actually expressed my view that the directive of the Inspector General of Police and then the action of the Commissioner of Police, Olatunji Dusu in Rivers State, and his men are unconstitutional, unlawful, and illegal, and do not represent some respect for a tier of government in our federation. Because whatever the interpretation, whatever the justification that the Inspector General of Police will give and the Commissioner of Police, the fact is that there has been obstruction of government and administration at the local government level in Rivers State. Imagine a situation where an entire tier of the three-tier federation that we run has been confiscated and obstructed by the Nigeria police. There will be no justification. I just listened to the Commissioner of Police who responded to the protesters at the state police headquarters in Moscow, that as a police officer, he has a duty to protect lives and property. Yes, that's the duty of the police, but you also have a fundamental duty to protect the rights of citizens. The 2020 Police Act has clearly, in the general objectives and specific objectives of the Nigeria Police, the supposedly renewed Nigeria Police, to also, in performing its function, the conventional traditional functions of protecting lives and property, but this time to also respect the rights of citizens, including the rights of workers. You see, the workers at the local government level across the state have just unjustly been prevented from going to work. Service providers have been restrained and obstructed from providing services to the people in the local government. The health sector, the primary health sector in the local government, primary education in the local government, and other core services that the local government administration is supposed to provide to the people. The police never imagined all of this. They never gave any concern to what would be the greater implication and consequence of this one-sided decision to want to purportedly protect lives and property and then obstruct governance and administration in a democratic society.
All right, Henry, now talking about obstructing governance and administration in a democratic society, now, in your opinion, what would you say are the main reasons for the deepening political crisis in Rivers State? Because this has been ongoing for a really, really long time, and it keeps getting deeper and deeper, as time passes. And how can these issues be addressed effectively?
You see, I have thought that what the police needed to have done, a proactive policing system would have been such that if they had really observed the rising indicators, you see, you have to be very proactive to understand the early warning signs. The rising indicators when utterances were made by the outgoing local government chairman at the time, and then the police never invited any one of them. That would have been a remedy to also forestall the orchestrated breakdown of law and order that the police is kind of pretending to want to prevent. Now, they never did that. Okay, that has happened. Some local government chairmen who served for 3 years pursuant to their election in 2021, and then the certificate of return having expired, their oath of office having expired on the 17th, they ought to have been directed by the security agencies to stay away from governance. Even if they thought that there were some pending legal matters, that they were expecting certain outcomes that would have returned them to office, they should have waited. Now, the police have come in, but the police ought to have been circumspect, and then also remember that there are legitimate innocent workers. So what should they have done? I thought that the police should have collaborated. Of course, the Police Act enables them to partner with other security agencies, perhaps with the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, and get a number of policemen and the corps members, and then secure certain strategic points of entry into the respective security secretariats, and then direct that if you have no business to come to the secretariat, do not come in. They could simply do such, perhaps show your identity card as a staff of the local government and come in, or show any proof of providing services for the local government and come in. Okay. And then ensure that the heads of programs, there are program officers and heads of units in the local government areas to provide certain essential services, should have gone to do work. Then what would they do? These workers should go to work under the protection of the police. They also have a duty to protect those workers to do their work. Then ensure that those you already see, the players in this system in Rivers State are known. The former 21 local government chairmen who are insisting to come back to work, they are known. And so you make sure that you identify them, profile them, and give them clear directive, if you like, invite them to your offices, and then cause them to undertake not to come close, including the caretaker committee members, chairmen that have been sworn in. If the police thought that both sides should not come to the secretariat, you can also prevent them from coming in. But to shut down the entire local government system in Rivers State for however it's going to be, I don't know, because the Inspector General of Police said he was waiting for some outcomes of matters in court. He never said which one precisely. And then why would he select what to wait for? There are judgments that would have enabled the police to allow people to go to work. But he chose not to adhere to those ones, but would rather wait for something that has not come into existence.
All right,
there is
Henry.
no decision of obstructed governance in local government.
All right, Henry. Well, thank you. We have to stop here, but quite an interesting conversation. But thank you so much for speaking to us on this.
Thank you very much for always providing this opportunity to reach out to our people. I quite appreciate this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, the news continues. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasser El-Rufai, has filed a defamation lawsuit against the Kaduna State Assembly on Wednesday at the Federal High Court in Kaduna. El-Rufai demanded an apology from the lawmakers who published a report that claims to defame him and his cabinet on the alleged misappropriation of over 423 billion naira during his 8-year administration. El-Rufai's legal team argued that the report is both false and malicious, designed to tarnish his reputation and discredit his administration's achievements, asserting that the allegations have caused significant harm to his personal and professional life. The former governor stated his developmental policies were efforts to improve infrastructure and education in Kaduna State. He maintains that the Assembly's allegations are politically motivated and lack any substantive evidence. The Sokoto State House of Assembly has moved the Sokoto Emirate Council Amendment Bill through its first and second readings. If enacted, this bill will significantly reduce the powers of the Sultan of Sokoto, Saad Abubakar III, including his authority to appoint kingmakers and district heads without government approval. This legislative action follows closely on the heels of concerns raised by the Muslim Rights Concern. On Monday, that's Murich's executive director, Ishaq Akintola, issued a statement warning about an alleged plan by Sokoto State Governor Ahmed Aliyu to depose the Sultan. He emphasized that the Sultan's role is both traditional and religious, serving as the spiritual leader for all Nigerian Muslims, not just those in Sokoto. Now to discuss this, I'm joined by Head of Networks at Galaxy Information Technology and Telecommunications, Jigawa State, Abdulkader Mohammed. Hello, Abdulkader. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
so, Abdulkader, now tell us, how does the proposed Sokoto Emirate Council Amendment Bill impact the traditional powers of the Sultan of Sokoto?
As we all know that the Sultan of Sokoto is not only a traditional ruler, but an institution that governs the activities of all Muslims in Nigeria, not only in Sokoto State, but all over Nigeria. He is the supreme leader, so that touching anything in his power will surely degrade the activities of the institution, paving way for any, they can even decide to say they can change him anytime they want, as is applied to other states where we have just seen what is happening in Kano. So if we continue to allow this to happen, naturally, it's going to have a negative effect in the activities of all Muslims in Nigeria.
All right, speaking of negative effects, now what specific concerns, has former Vice President Atiku Abubakar raised regarding state government interference with traditional enthronement processes?
The truth is this: whenever any governor or any government, either in local government, state, or the federation, if they have issues with the public, they naturally go to those traditional rulers and seek their assistance to talk to the people in a way that people will accept whatever program or whatever it is, to accept and use it, or to obey the government. Not the government. Not government. The government is always seeking their assistance. So depriving them of other some rights, they have to get approvals and whatever. We are just derailing from the traditional way of doing things, and that would definitely harm the institution.
All right, now we can actually see a similar event, happening in Kano State. Just away from Sokoto, briefly, could you explain, to us the recent events in Kano involving the dethronement and reinstatement of emirs and how they relate to concerns about state government influence on traditional institutions?
Politicians sometimes are very funny in the sense that they would just say, this person or this institution, whatever, is not supporting me. So I will make sure that when I get into power, make sure that I change them to suit or to bring in anybody who is outside, maybe help in installing the government, either by giving money or any support, so that they can continue doing what they feel is good. Even if it is not in the interest of the masses. So naturally, even if they install somebody, people may not, take any, give any respect to those institutions, and they are destroying the whole system. That's a fact.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Abdulkader, for speaking to us and your time as well.
Thank you so much. Nice having me.
Now to health matters. The battle against illicit drug use and trafficking in Nigeria has taken a huge turn in the last 3 years, with several arrests being made and several syndicates exposed. However, there is still much more to be done. As the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, joins other anti-drug agencies around the world to mark World Drug Day, the agency says working on drug demand reduction is another way to go in the battle against the use and sale of illicit drugs in Nigeria. News Central's Bernard Akede has more in this report.
Worldwide, from individuals struggling with substance use disorders to communities grappling with the consequences of drug trafficking and organized crime, the impact of drugs is far-reaching and complex. A 2018 drug use survey carried out on persons between the ages of 15 and 65 showed that in the previous year, 14.3 million people abused illicit substances. This figure translates to 14.4% prevalence in Nigeria. Also in Nigeria, like other countries, several factors can be listed as the reasons for the high use of illicit drugs.
The predisposing factor responsible for foiling people going into substance abuse, if we have to discuss that, that's quite a number of such factors, ranging from socioeconomic factors to parenting, that's poor parenting, that's at the family level, to environmental issues, peer pressure, as well as social media, which is another factor.
However, in the last 3 years, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, says the battle against trafficking and use of illicit drugs has been a tough one, but much success has been recorded.
Let me just bring our strategies on, from two pillars. First, the drug supply reduction, and that's the law enforcement angle of our job. That's the area where we make arrests, we make seizures, we prosecute, and also go after the assets of the traffickers and the bearers. All that, I can tell you, in the last 3 years, there has been quite a lot of effort in that regard. We made more than 50,000 arrests, and I can tell you also that indeed, within the same period, more than 9,000 offenders have been successfully prosecuted.
The theme for this year's World Drug Day is "The evidence is clear, invest in prevention." To this end, the NDLEA believes the battle against illicit drug trafficking and use goes beyond just the apprehension and prosecution of suspects. It also has to do with working on drug demand reduction.
One of the steps that the agency has taken is to put in place a social advocacy initiative, which we call War Against Drug Abuse Social Advocacy Campaign, wider social advocacy campaign, which was indeed launched on June 26, 2021, to mobilize the citizenry to buy in and take ownership of the fight against substance abuse. That's raising the awareness.
As Nigeria joins the rest of the world in the fight against illicit drug use and trafficking, we are reminded that it will take a collective effort of government agencies and private individuals. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has placed Nigeria at high risk as it activates its emergency operating center following a cholera outbreak that has now claimed 53 lives. News Central's Niyi Omoni completes the story.
The cholera outbreak in Nigeria poses a serious public health threat. Nigeria, with the largest population in Africa, is currently grappling with a cholera epidemic. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, as of 24 June, 1,528 suspected cholera cases and 53 related deaths were recorded across 31 states and 107 local government areas, representing a case fatality rate of 3.5%.
It's not a figure that we need to be proud of, and I really believe that a lot can be done to keep that forward.
While the exact cause of the outbreak remains under investigation, Lagos State, which has reported the most cases, is probing various possibilities.
Street beverages are very common in Lagos, in Nigeria. It is what a lot of people consume on their way to and from work or after school. So it's not surprising that the number of a few of our suspected cases referred to the consumption of a liquid beverage.
So far, we've tested several, and we haven't got any positive results back on cholera. We're continuing to test, hoping that we can maybe identify a particular source, but as of now, we've not been able to do that.
In response to the worsening situation, the NCDC has activated its National Cholera Emergency Operations Center as the federal government reels out containment and treatment efforts.
When you look at the magnitude of the problem globally, the shortage of cholera vaccine is a global issue. We don't produce the cholera vaccine here, and it's not produced even in Africa. So before we get to that point, there's some basic things that we will do. Hand washing, better sanitation, hygiene practices, prompt treatment. And we have engaged the global actors who have access to those vaccines already to identify sources of those vaccines that we can use.
Data show that the outbreak may currently be under control. However, there is an urgent need to step up advocacy, encouraging the public to take greater responsibility for their hygiene and what they consume. Common environmental practices like open defecation, which is prevalent in Lagos, have been cited as likely contributing factors. In Lagos for News Central, Ni Omani.
Coming up after the break. Kenya's President Ruto withdraws finance bill after deadly demonstrations. We'll bring you details in a moment. The news continues in East Africa, where Kenyan President William Ruto has said that a bill containing contentious tax hikes would be withdrawn, dramatically reversing course after more than 20 people died and Parliament was ransacked by protesters opposed to the legislation. But the president warned that the withdrawal of the finance bill would mean a significant shortfall in funding for development programs designed to help farmers and school teachers, among others. Now, this comes as the East African nation struggles to lower its foreign debt burden. Ruto's administration has been taken by surprise by the intensity of opposition to its tax hikes, with protests breaking out across the country last week.
Consequently, having reflected on the continuing conversation around the content of the Finance Bill 2024, and listening keenly to the people of Kenya, who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn, and I have agreed with these members that that becomes our collective position.
In North Africa, Mauritanians are seeking change and stability ahead of the country's presidential election. President Mohamed Ould Sheikh Ghazouani kicked off the campaign for June 29th elections last Friday. The 67-year-old is tipped for a second term as head of the country of 4.5 million that lies strategically between North and Sub-Saharan Africa. Among those running are the leaders of the Islamist party Tawassul, Hamadi Ould Sid El Mukhtar, and human rights activist Biram Ould Abate, who came second behind Ghazouani in 2019.
Dans la ville de Nouakchott, vous voyez comment il est. Tout ce que vous allez voir pour la propagande de cette présidentielle, ce n'est que lui qui domine sur le terrain. Et ça se voit clairement que c'est lui qui va passer dans le premier tour, Inch'Allah.
On espère que notre candidat passe, Inch'Allah, et à voir ce qu'on espère de voir pour changer l'état de ce pays qui souffre depuis des décennies, cette situation bloquée dans tous les domaines, l'économie, la santé.
Still ahead. Foreigners who glorify terror acts to be deported from Germany. We'll bring you details in a bit. In other news from around the world, Germany's Interior Minister Nancy Faeser says the government has agreed on measures making it easier to deport foreigners who glorify acts of terror after a surge in online hate posts during the Gaza war. According to a draft law agreed by the German cabinet, under the new rules, foreigners could face deportation for social media comments that glorify or condone a single terrorist act.
Ganz klar, islamistische Hetzer, die geistig in der Steinzeit leben, haben in unserem Land nichts zu suchen. Wer keinen deutschen Pass hat und hier terroristische Taten verherrlicht, der muss, wo immer möglich, ausgewiesen und abgeschoben werden. Dazu schaffen wir jetzt eine neue rechtliche Grundlage. Ich bin sehr zuversichtlich, dass die Koalitionsfraktionen diese Gesetzesänderungen schnell beraten und auch beschließen werden. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
In business, the Central Bank of Nigeria has issued a directive requiring deposit money banks and international money transfer operators to pay diaspora remittances in Naira, aligning them with the corresponding foreign currency inflows. Eligible IMTO operators now have the option to directly access the CBN window or conduct foreign exchange transactions through authorized dealer banks. Now, this policy enables IMTOs to actively participate in Nigeria's foreign exchange market. On the Business Edge show, Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO of Ashare Investments, shared his insights on the potential future actions of the CBN.
It's the same thing we've talked about, try and error. You try this, if it works, fine. If it doesn't work, you come into. They've not really gotten their act together on stabilizing the exchange rate or attracting liquidity into the market. So what we've been seeing from the CBN thus far is this fire brigade approach. Can this work? Okay, let's try it. If it doesn't work, then you have to go back to the drawing board. I think finally they have a board, but there are too many drawings on the board. So they try to look at which of the drawings are really going to work for them. So I personally think the CBN is really not on top of the issue, especially with when it comes to FX. But what they've taken now, the decision taken.
In the world of sports, Paralympic champion Folashade Oluwafemi has broken an 8-year-old record. That's the world record in women's over 60. That's 86 kilogram with a lift of 161 kg at the Para Powerlifting World Cup in Georgia. Oluwafemi broke the record earlier set in Rio 2016 Paralympics by her compatriot Josephine Orji. She made the 3 successful lifts, starting with 150 kg, followed by home athletes Nadia Ali and Amani Ali. Meanwhile, reigning world champion Onyinyechi Mark also made sure she kicked off the competition on a rousing note as she equaled her own world record en route to the gold medal in the women's up to 61 kg. Mark, who had 3 successful lifts, lifted 146 kg in her 3rd attempt, equaling her world record mark set in Dubai 2023. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our top stories. We told you that fire outbreak has been recorded at Dangote Refinery in Lagos. Company says no cause for alarm. We also told you that former Kaduna Governor El Rufai has sued State Assembly for defamation over alleged misappropriation of 423 billion naira. Finally, you heard that Kenya's President Ruto has withdrawn finance bill after deadly demonstrations. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen Usman.